You're a Big Ten fan. Feel blessed. So much change in the sport, of course. We will talk more about it for the next couple hours. Right here at the Voice of College Football, you've arrived at the Big Ten live show. Moved from Monday to Friday to accommodate your calls. But we may not have our call-in line tonight, but we will take comments and questions, and of course, take your calls through StreamYard. So we will provide that link here in the next few minutes, but we may not have the traditional call-in line tonight. Do appreciate you all stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. Let's get to the headlines, folks. Let's get to the headlines. Just released here in the last couple hours, the NCAA pausing NIL investigations in the wake of Tennessee case. So there are investigations, or were investigations, going on at the University of Florida, University of Tennessee. And fill me in if there are any others. I'm sure the article tells us. NIL investigations. So Michigan, you're not off the hook. After another courtroom loss, we talked much about it, so check out the live streams and the videos we posted. The NCAA has told its enforcement staff to halt investigations into booster-backed collectives or other third-party making name, image, and likeness compensation deals with Division I athletes. NCAA President Charles Baker said that the Division I Board of Directors directed enforcement staff to, quote, pause and not begin investigations involving third-party participation in NIL-related activities. The move comes a week after a federal judge granted a preliminary injunction in a lawsuit brought by the Attorney Generals of Tennessee and Virginia. The antitrust suit challenges NCAA rules against recruiting inducements. But forget that. Induce all you want. Quote, there will be no penalty for conduct that occurs consistent with the injunction while the injunction is in place, Baker wrote in the letter obtained by the Associated Press. I agree with this decision while the progress toward long-term solutions is underway and while we await discussions with the attorneys general. So we're not going to go through the entire rest of that. The bottom line is all is fair in love and war. It all goes. It's all fine. There is nothing that's basically off the books, off the table. Let it go until we figure it out. Until we figure out what is best for all of us to make money, then we will pull it all together and deliver a ruling. But it's going to be messy and it's going to be chaotic, and there are going to be a lot of twists and turns before that. Be sure of that. Let's focus on the Big Ten. But that is, of course, one of the big storylines in college football that, of course, affects the Big Ten. And the other would be the CFP. And I will send out the link since I do not believe we've got the call-in line tonight, unfortunately. But you are invited to please join the show. I've just dropped the link there in the chat. And we'll check your comments and questions. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use our link. It's the same shopping experience. Does not cost you a penny. The college football playoff proposal that's out there, whether that be in the tweaking of the 12-team, which we know what happened there in the tweaking of the 12-team playoff, that had to be done because of the demise of the Pac-12 going from 6 automatics, 6 at-larges to the 5+7 format. So that's in place for 2024. But now we're going on to this 14-team playoff. That serves the Big Ten. that serves the Big Ten and the SEC, and we will explain why. But we do have a call, so let's get right to that. We got our buddy Chris on the line. Chris, what's going on tonight? Hello, Chris.
Yes.
There you are. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, Mark. I guess I got on the wrong link or something. I couldn't quite get through to you.
Oh, you're here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay. Can you review with me, I guess, what you want to talk? Because I don't want to give you something you don't want to talk about.
Oh, it's a Big Ten live show.
I understand that. But
so anything concerning the Big Ten? Anything at all. If you want to talk about Northwestern's offensive line, we can talk about that. We can talk about Rutgers safeties battle. Anything you want to talk about?
I have to be honest with you. I don't know that I keep up with it well enough to really give you any information that you don't already know about. But I guess if you want to talk about Northwestern, I don't know, this last year they didn't have Pat Fitzgerald, but how did they, because I didn't really follow it. Maybe you can help me, Mark. I'm sorry. It'd be a lot better if I knew, but do they promote within the ranks, or how was it they went about picking a coach? Do you know that? Or do you have
yes, they promoted within the ranks. They took their defensive coordinator, who had only been there for one season as defensive coordinator, David Braun, and elevated him to interim head coach. He was only the interim head coach during the season, but they were so pleased with the job that he did, which was nothing short of remarkable. And so he is the permanent head coach.
Oh, okay. So I didn't follow it close enough, and I apologize. I'm sure you don't like people calling in; they don't know what they're talking about.
No need to apologize, Chris. We can't all know everything.
Well, I don't know hardly anything, so I'm on the other end of the spectrum, I guess. But I guess the question I might have, without respect to that, would be, they had kind of in my opinion, it's just my opinion, by the way, it's kind of like they were kind of, like I said, I made the comparison, and it wasn't necessarily to, because people don't like when I do this, but in my opinion, they were a lot like Michigan in 1984. I mean, if people don't want to use that comparison, they don't have to, but they both had 5-4 schedule in conference, and I think Northwestern probably had a better team. I try to be as fair as I can, but so I mean, I guess that says something about both schools. I guess if you have a team that's as good as Northwestern, and I guess you could say is as bad as Michigan was that year, if you want to look at it that way. But so even when Michigan's bad, they're still pretty good, is kind of what I think. But anyway, so are they expected to have a better team this season, or how have they? Do they? Because I don't really understand what they do as far as these programs, Mark. As far as I know, there's a transfer portal, and I know my guess would be any school that needs to. They look probably at the transfer portal, but with the new NIL and all that now. What do they prioritize more? Do they prioritize bringing in new people, or do they look outside their program, or how does that work? Can you help me with that?
When you're talking about priorities, you're talking about high school recruiting versus the transfer portal?
Well, I guess I don't know enough about it to really say, but when you have a program like Northwestern, who I consider them to be a top program, and other people probably don't, but do they really have to look outside their program, or can they just say, hey, we're Northwestern, kind of like, Texas or whoever else, Georgia or whoever, do they have to really look outside their own program, or can they build their own? How do they do that? Do you know?
Well, I don't believe that Northwestern is going to be a major factor in the transfer portal. They've only brought in 2 players this offseason. That's very low on the spectrum. And they did something similar to that last offseason.
Okay.
And they have lost 10 players through the transfer portal, which is not alarming. That's also on the low end.
Now, when they do that, when they lose these players, I know, for example, I think one that actually committed, an early commit, I guess, to North was the Zerbrug. I think he recommitted to Oklahoma. Did he recommit because of the scandal with I don't really understand what goes on there, but he was going to be one of their top recruits, and I think he decommitted and went to, I'm pretty sure he's at Oklahoma. Is that correct? Do you know?
Trying to think who you're talking about.
Zerbrug. He was, I think he was a top out of Alliance, Ohio. It's where Chris Zerbrug was from. His son.
Michigan quarterback, you mean?
Well, his Zerbrug. Son. Yeah, his son. Yeah.
Yeah.
A good athlete, though. I guess a real good athlete that apparently committed to Northwestern. And Is that common for, I mean, I would think that once you commit to a program, I would think unless there's like real serious issues at a program, which maybe there was, I don't really know. I mean, I would think you'd want to, I don't know if that speaks well of him or.
Oh, there were serious issues. These players flip commitments all the time.
I don't think that's good though.
I don't think it's good either. I completely agree with you. It completely flies in the face of the definition commitment.
Right. So when they commit to a program, is that, I mean, I know like in the NFL, for example, there was one example where a player for Denver had something to do with a deadline or something like that. The deadline, he didn't get his, it was a long time ago, but they lost him to Baltimore. And do you remember that situation where it's like, and it was only because they didn't get the information in time for him to, I don't know if you remember who that was. Anyway, there's not something similar like that in college football where once you commit to a program, you only have up to a certain date to I would think you'd have to kind of stick to it, but maybe I don't know enough about it.
You're not talking about the Baltimore-Denver John Elway trade, are you?
No, there was a player for Denver that was from Louisville that was, I can't think of his name at the top of my head, but Denver was going to re-sign him, and they had money was involved with it, obviously, but
Elvis Dumerville.
Dumerville, yeah. And whatever reason, the trade deadline or whatever it was at the time, like had till midnight or something like that. And I guess the fax didn't go through until 2 in the morning or something like that, where it was, I guess they were so strict about the way it went that he couldn't resign with Denver. And so he ended up getting traded to Baltimore. Is it Dumerville?
Yeah. Well, what does that have to do with the transfer portal in college football?
I'm kind of thinking the way college football's trending. I mean, I would think there'd be something kind of like that where you can commit to another program, I would think maybe, but then, you can't just, oh, I don't like it here, and now I need to go to wherever else. I mean, I would think at some point you have to kind of stand by your word a little bit, don't you?
Well, once you sign something, yes, you've got to stand by your word. You've got to play for at least one season. Once you've signed and you're on scholarship and you are enrolled in school, but you're talking about commitments. So National Signing Day is coming up in mid-December. There have already been commitments all over the place. If you look up any team in college football, they probably have anywhere from 5 to 10 commitments right now. There will eventually be about 25 out of high school, and I cannot venture a percentage on how many of them will decommit or flip to another school, but it's fairly high, maybe 20%.
Okay. Well, what's the point of committing then if you're not committed?
I am on board with you, Chris.
Okay.
Somebody needs to clarify what the word commitment means.
Okay. Well, I guess that's the question.
Yeah, if I was a student athlete, I would not be committing to any school until I was 100% sure this is where I'm going. I think it's a joke. It's just a big game. It's stupid. That's why I don't like recruiting. I could care less. I don't follow it. I follow it to the point that I have to follow it to present a good product here in good content, but I generally lean on people that follow recruiting and bring them on to talk about it rather than I have no interest, zero interest in following a bunch of 17-year-olds and what their whim is for that particular day.
Right. Well, at any rate, didn't you tell me that there was like a limited number of scholarships for the commits that they have? So even if they're committed, there's probably not for sure that, does it become a different sort of a situation, I guess, once they have a scholarship? Are they at that point, maybe, are they obligated to either sign or not? Or how does that work exactly? It's like, I would think once they have a scholarship, then aren't they on the hook, or does it not? That doesn't really apply in those situations.
Well, I don't know the bureaucracy of the red tape and the paperwork, but it basically goes hand in hand that when you sign a national letter of intent, once you sign, you have received your scholarship. There's an agreement that you're a scholarship player. The school is using a scholarship. You are signing 90% sign on National Signing Day, and you are then committed to the school. And when I mean committed, I mean you are under contract to go to school and play for the school for that particular season.
Just for 1 year?
Sure. Just for 1 year.
So that
you can transfer after that.
It doesn't cover more than 1 year of eligibility?
No, not anymore.
Oh, I see. Maybe that explains why they have so many people that are dropping out then.
These players can transfer whenever they want now. And
Yeah.
we even had a couple cases this year, Chris, where, well, there's two stipulations. There are, I don't know if I'm using the correct term anymore, but hardship cases. Let's say there have been times in which players have, after signing for that particular school with that particular year coming into college football, that they've changed their mind and the school has released them
Uh-huh.
out of their letter of intent. And now with the situation where coaches leave, that opens up the transfer portal for that particular school for an additional 30 days.
Uh-huh. And why are the coaches leaving?
To make more money. Most of them, not in every case, but I think you're probably up to date on all the coaches that have left schools this year, correct?
No.
Alabama,
Well, sure.
Michigan,
Yeah, okay.
Washington, Arizona, San
Okay.
Jose State,
Yeah.
Boston College,
Okay.
UCLA.
UCLA left Chip Kelly?
Chip Kelly left UCLA
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
about 3 weeks ago to become the offensive coordinator at Ohio State.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's good. I mean, that would have been, I guess they kept, wasn't he supposed to go to A&M, the Ohio State head coach? I thought he was rumored to, can't leave his name off, or Ryan Day. Yeah, wasn't he supposed to be heading to Texas A&M or?
There was a rumor out there. Well, you bring up Texas A&M. They also, new coach, Duke, new coach.
David Cutcliffe left?
No, that would have been Mike Elko. David Cutcliffe left 2 to 3 years ago. Mike Elko was there for 2 years, and he left to go to Texas A&M.
Oh, I see.
Jimbo Fisher got fired.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, I guess shows how current I am. Anyway, so it looks like some of those changes, though, you talked about. I know, for example, they just kind of, like the Arizona coach went to Washington, so that had more to do with Alabama hiring. How come, for example, wasn't there? I thought there was like an offensive coordinator or somebody at Alabama that was at least. So Alabama had to look outside their program to bring in somebody. I guess they thought that was kind of good. I guess. I mean, DeBauer. Do you think when they do that, I mean, I kind of look at that as being kind of a way to, maybe I'm too old school in my thinking, but I would think like if you have a program like Alabama, I would think there'd almost be like somebody in the pipeline almost. Do you know what I mean? It would be like, I'm a little surprised that like Saban wasn't like, I don't know who it would have been, but bringing somebody along, maybe even, what was it? Mississippi coach, because he's been there. I would think, that was the rumor anyway. Lane Kiffin was supposed to be but then it was kind of surprising because they didn't hire Lane Kiffin. So, what are your thoughts about when they hired DeBauer? Was that kind of a way maybe to kind of bring Washington down a little bit, or how does that work? Or do you have?
Well, I think every situation's different because you brought up a situation in which we've seen play out at places like Oklahoma, from Bob Stoops to Lincoln Riley, at Ohio State from Urban Meyer to Ryan Day, at Stanford, Jim Harbaugh, and then he leaves and David Shaw is elevated. So those situations were high leverage, high caliber programs and jobs, and they thought that somebody was on the staff that was capable of elevating. But if that person is not there, then a place like Alabama can go get a guy that just led a school to a national championship game.
I understand that. I guess my question might be, and I don't know the philosophy behind it. I don't really, I'm surprised. I mean, I suspect that maybe even Saban probably had some say over, my gut, just not knowing. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't, but he might have had some say over who he thought would make a good replacement. Who knows? But maybe he didn't want Kiffin there. Who knows? But because I don't know. But I would have thought though that with all the people that he's kind of helped bring along there, I know Sarkisian left for Texas, and like I said, Kiffin left for Mississippi, and I think there was who was the coach? I think that was Penn State's head coach for a while. I thought he was maybe in the room running. Yeah, I would think maybe
Bill
that
O'Brien was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He took that job before he went to Boston College.
No, he's the one. Okay, so he took another job.
Yes.
Do you kind of halfway agree with me, Mark, or am I way off base on this? I'm kind of thinking at some point, maybe I'm way off base because I know Alabama, that's like the pinnacle, right? I think for almost any coach, I think you would think, well, if I can, I can't think of a single coach who would probably say I don't want to go to Alabama, but is there ever going to be a point maybe where Alabama isn't going to be the pinnacle to where it might be? I know, for example, it been like the 70s, or, like Notre Dame for a while was you couldn't really do any better than Notre Dame. And even now you can maybe make that argument, but, or is it always going to kind of be to where there's always going to be I don't know what the whole point of this, because you said we could talk about the CFP, but, what's the point of admitting 12 schools if there's only maybe, I'm just kind of going to spitball it, Mark. If there's only 4 or 5 schools that are really capable, I guess, of really being the national champion, I don't see what's the point of including another 7? I don't really see what that's going to do. I mean, does that make it better? Does it?
Chris, I think we're going to drift off into a subject that we've covered before, and I can answer that with one word: money.
Well, no, but
money. You make more money with more playoff teams. More playoff games, you make more money.
I don't agree with that, because the playoffs, and I'm not trying to contradict you, Mark.
You have every right to not agree with that being a good thing for the sport, but you cannot disagree with a fact. They're going to make more money by adding more teams and more games to the college football playoff.
Well, all right. I don't know that I know about it, but my point is there's only so much money to go around is what I'm thinking. Even if more money maybe to share, I could maybe see that might be true, but I don't think there's going to be more money to give. But regardless,
yes, there is going to be more money, because they are going to generate more money by playing more playoff games.
Well, that assumes that more people are going to care, and I don't really think that that's necessarily going to be the case. In fact, if you don't mind me making this last point before you let me go, I did my own, because I think you're at least aware of it, my own little, what do you want to call it? I mean, it's not really even mine. After 3 weeks, which is only 3 games, I had at least one of the 2 teams that were in the national champion, and then the other one, I'm just telling this. I mean, people can say, well, so what? Who cares? Whatever. But after 3 weeks, I had one of the teams in the championship game, and the other team, Michigan, I had in 5th place. And the only reason they weren't as high as the other ones was because there was, 3 other teams or whatever, or 4, I guess, standing in their way that were outstanding. I mean, one of them actually was Rutgers. Okay. Now, people can laugh at that. Oh, he had Rutgers rated ahead. Well, yeah, I did. But regardless, I had Rutgers 4th, Michigan 5th, whatever. In fact, I told people about it the week it happened. They're like, oh, when's Michigan going to play anybody any good? And I said, we're playing Rutgers.
Chris, I highly doubt that anyone listening right now knows what the hell you're talking about or cares what you're talking about.
Well, I care.
So let me just clarify something. So you're telling us your top 5 teams in the country in week 3 included Washington and Michigan?
No, the top 3 teams were, it was Washington, Texas, and Oklahoma. Number 4 was Rutgers, and number 5 was Michigan. Yeah. I had Rutgers rated number 4 after 3 weeks. Yeah, after 3 weeks of playings. But the point is, my point I think I'm trying to make is, at that point, it might have been useful to have a 12-team playoff. I mean, that after 3 weeks, we would even need one. It would have included Colorado, by the way, and it would have included Florida State too. Florida State would have just barely got in; they would have been the number 12. But,
good night, Chris. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Let me at least say my piece. Do you mind? I mean, you haven't.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're talking about rankings you had in week 3 that are justifying a 12-team playoff that you just said 3 seconds ago. You didn't like a 12-team playoff or any playoff. So that doesn't make any sense. And number 2, we're not having playoffs after 3 weeks. So it's silly to even discuss. And you just mentioned that you would have had Colorado in your playoff.
Yeah.
They obviously were not one of the best teams in the country. They were a horrible team. They lost 8 games.
After 3 weeks, all right, whatever. If you don't want to agree with it, don't. It's fine.
You
keep saying I'm stupid, Mark. I don't know. I don't really.
I never said you were stupid, Chris.
Yeah,
your little argument here is stupid.
I'm not.
You're not stupid. You are not a stupid individual. I believe that with all my heart.
Okay, good.
What you are proposing, whatever it is, that is stupid.
No. I'm saying after 3 weeks, we could have used a 12-team playoff, and it would have been.
That is stupid. Yes, thank you.
Right,
that is stupid. All right, Chris.
Whatever.
Thanks for calling. All right, we're off to a great start. And I believe we'll have the call-in line here, but we want to, of course, honor the people that have called in via the StreamYard. So thank you so much for that. The best thing that Chris offered tonight, because he is completely correct about this, this drives me nuts. I shouldn't care. Well, I don't really care, except, yes, let's not consider these commitments anymore. I completely agree with Dabo Sweeney, who says, when you commit to our school, you're not taking any more visits. Now, whether he should be allowed to do that is another argument, another debate. But I fully am on board with him. You've committed. Do we understand what commitment means? We don't, because it's not practiced by many of these athletes. I couldn't be a college football coach. That's all there is to it. Too much just silliness going on. The real MVP's here. What's going on, sir?
Hey, Mark, I've got my calculator out, and I'm just trying to figure out Chris's math here about Rutgers being third in the third week and Colorado being fourth, or, something like that.
Yeah, they were undefeated. So, yeah. I might have had them in the top 5 of the country in my top 25. That actually makes sense, but I would not have proposed to call off the rest of the season and start a playoff at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting logic he was using. So, interesting. Mark, when we're talking about the playoffs, the 12-team playoff or the 14-team playoff, I find an interesting strategy the Big Ten and SEC is doing with trying to get more automatic qualifying spots in there. I feel like they should want less qualifying spots because they're going to get the lion's share of the at-large bids every single year.
I totally agree. I completely agree. I think that what might be driving this is that ESPN wants to be able to turn around to its advertisers and say, we can guarantee this level of brand is going to be playing in these games. But the history of the playoff and the playoff rankings, the committee selections, and now the increased level of play and brands within these two conferences show us that they will not be wanting for playoff spots. I agree.
Right. And I mean, I understand a bit what you're talking about, but how much more enticing is really a TCU Baylor matchup? If it's two of the top 20 teams in the country and there's a possible playoff spot on the line versus Oregon, Ohio State, which game do you think is going to draw bigger ratings? Or how much of an impact do you think there's going to be? Because I don't see a tangible impact.
Yes. If those games are played the same week, and let's say all the teams involved are 8-1, let's just say, and they're all ranked in the top 5 in the country, 10 million people are going to watch Ohio State and Oregon play, and 2.5 million people are going to watch Baylor and TCU play.
Right. So you were talking about this for TV companies in order to try to bolster ratings for the lower teams, but I wonder if that's too companies.
I did not explain myself. They will be able to go to their advertisers and say, we can guarantee that these many games will involve SEC teams, these many games will involve Big Ten teams, and therefore we will be able to demand more money.
Okay, I maybe you need to break this down a little further for me because I'm not fully understanding it. If they say over the last 10 years to these advertisers, we can project this many SEC teams and Big Ten teams are in the playoffs, I feel like that's going to be more than the guaranteed. So why can't they just do that instead?
Because the guarantee is going to be a minimum. It's going to be a basement. It's going to be a floor.
And people value the guarantee more than the projected out average?
I am not that versed in TV ad revenue, those discussions. I know something about it, but I am in no way an expert.
Right, because
Although I will say, I'm sorry to cut you off and start over here. I will say that most companies, corporations, the larger they are, the more they want to be able to budget, the more they want guarantees.
I get that, Mark, from a safety perspective, but from a growth perspective, I feel like you're really hindering yourself here with a bunch of quote unquote smaller brands.
Well, I think you're hindering yourself if you make that a locked figure of qualifying qualifiers, automatic qualifiers. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. That's going to be a minimum. They're not going to say, well, the Big Ten only gets 3 and the SEC only gets 3. No, it's going to be at least 3.
Right. But how many, if it's a 14-team playoff and the SEC gets 3, the Big Ten gets 3, the Big 12 ACC get 2, and the group of 5 get 1, there's hardly any spots left.
What is that? 3, 6,
10.
3, 6, 8, 10, 11.
Oh, 11. So you only got 3 spots left.
Yeah.
So that would be what? 5 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams? When, in my opinion, if you go to 14 teams with just one automatic qualifier, you can get 6 SEC teams and 4 Big Ten teams, or 7 potentially in 1 year as a maximum. Like, I don't see how any possible scenario get under 3.
Now, here is where I agree with you. Not so much about what is being guaranteed to the Big Ten and the SEC in regards to auto qualifiers, but in terms of the AQs given to the ACC and the Big 12. So that would total 4 out of the 14, since they each get 2. That's what I think was and I made this statement when this news first broke, and then I read this just today and thought, okay, well, I was thinking along the same lines because I stated it, that was probably a counter move by the Big 12 and the ACC to say, oh, if you're going to get these many AQs, then we need to receive at least one other besides our conference champion. And that was the counter move in negotiations.
Right. I understand that from a negotiating standpoint, but Mark, I'm not a negotiator. I'm not affiliated with any of the conferences. As much as the Big Ten fans probably think I am negotiated with the SEC or affiliated, I care about the health of the sport overall. And something else we haven't talked about is if you have 11 of the playoff spots already guaranteed, one of the biggest brands out there in Notre Dame, it's going to be really tough for them to get in this format. Like, really tough. And they're one of the biggest brands in the sport. So I'm just surprised they would go along with this.
Well, they would have 3 spots, correct? Is that what we just figured out?
Yes.
They would have 3 spots. And if Notre Dame was the next obvious team, then they would, let's not confuse the 3 final spots with being the 3 lowest spots.
I understand that, Mark, but my theory and point is the Big 12 team and the ACC team is going to be more years than not behind Notre Dame than if they were at large spots. So Notre Dame is kind of eliminating a few spots they could potentially get if they were at larges.
No, I think that, again, this is a guarantee that the Big Ten and the SEC are gunning for, just to give themselves some insurance against some kind of crazy situation or down season or something, or to the point that I made the other night, Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, coming out saying we want to play more meaningful games in November, meaning we want to jack up the revenue in our conference by pitting more big brands against each other, suppressing the records, but guaranteeing the spots. So we still get the spots, even with a bunch of 9-3 teams. Notre Dame's going to still make the playoffs if they're 10-2. And they're going to most likely miss the playoffs if they're 9-3.
I largely agree with that. I think if they were 9-3 with the amount of at-large bids in the 12-team playoff, there's a few years where they could make it in. If going in the future, I don't think there's any scenario where 9-3 would get them in. That's all I'm saying. I think it does hurt Notre Dame. I don't think it's significant, but it's just interesting to me.
All right, Daryl. Anything else?
Yeah, I actually got one more thing. What conference is Florida State in, Mark?
They are currently in the ACC.
Okay, and what conference do you expect them to be in tomorrow?
Tomorrow, they will still be in the ACC.
Okay, and when in the future, when they play football on the field the next time, what conference are they going to be part of?
They will be in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Okay, I know you upload these clips of Florida State from all these Florida State people thinking we got ESPN on the ropes. Every day is another day. They're just one step closer, Mark. But they're going to be in the ACC this year. They'll probably be in the ACC next year and the year after that. They chose to sign the grant of rights. It's their fault. They were in this position. They didn't have the foresight to see this could happen. Sorry, Florida State. It's your choice. You got to live with the consequences.
On the surface, you were correct, because when this first broke and we started having these conversations both here and on the Florida State channel, that's the obvious first retort to that is, well, you signed the grant of rights. That's what happens sometimes when you trade potential for security. You were trading, you see it all the time with Major League Baseball contracts in particular. I want to trade my what I could make in the short term for security. I'll sign a 10-year contract instead of a 3-year contract at a lower rate because I want security. That's what Florida State and these other schools did. On the surface, totally agree with your response. However, Florida State is trying to prove, and it appears as though they're making some headway, that there were some less than scrupulous activity by the ACC and ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, until I actually see a document, something to verify this claim, Mark, I'm going to put in the rumor/speculation category, in the same bucket as Florida State's leaving on February 16th. Florida State's leaving on April 15th. Florida State is leaving on XYZ day. I need to see tangible evidence that this, basically what you're calling, in my opinion, collusion happened between the ACC and ESPN.
I hear you.
Right, and until he provides that evidence, I have a very hard time believing either party would do this.
We here at the Voice of College Football, we draw the line at reasonable speculation that involves evidence. So I'm not out here making crazy videos that Ohio State's leaving the Big Ten tomorrow because they don't like that Connor Stallions was cheating or whatever. But at the same time, we understand that these two entities, they are in court filing lawsuits against each other. So this is happening.
No, I understand it. My point of view is I just want to wait and see until something actually comes out, Mark.
I don't.
That's my point of view.
I got to produce content. So I'm going to continue to report. And I'm not like Mr. Reporter, insider, realignment guy that's sitting here every night talking about realignment. I'm not that guy, probably will never be that guy. But when there are items to talk about, I will talk about them. I will read what's being reported, and then I will provide my take on what that could mean, which direction it could go from there.
Oh, and as a fan that has absolutely no care, I'm going to point and laugh at the absurdity of this entire situation because it gives me something easy to dunk on, Mark. I mean, this is, no offense, but this is Ohio State level soft from Florida State fan. They're just crying up and down. We missed the playoffs. We were 13-0. Our conference is terrible. That's all they've done for like 2 years is just cry, Mark, over every situation. And as a fan, an outsider that doesn't care, it's pretty funny to see the outrage of this fan base over not getting everything they want, like an entitled teenager.
What fan base would not be crying about being 13-0 and a major conference champion and being left out of the playoff?
Oh, everyone would cry, and everyone has the right to complain. And I would probably complain. But there's a certain point, Mark, where you just got to move on. I mean, it's been 5 months since this happened. I mean, come on. We're in the next season. They should emotionally move on. It's a tragedy. I said Florida State belonged in the playoffs when it happened, but everybody's got to move on to next season.
Okay.
And my big concern.
I'm going to amend my statement, my question of sorts. What fan base that went 13-0 and won its conference would be moving on after 5 months after being snubbed last season?
I think fan bases of teams who have a legitimate chance to win the national championship this year a lot of them would have moved on. I don't know about all of them, but I think if Alabama was snubbed at 13-0, I think they would have moved on. I think if Georgia was 13-0, a lot of their fans would move on. Ohio State, because they understand there's a next year.
I get your point, but we understand that Florida State has not been in this position for a decade. So that is, as opposed to the schools that you just mentioned that expect to be competing for a national championship every year. But there would also be a portion of that fan base that would be even more offended because we're Alabama, we're Ohio State, and we got left out of the playoff. The playoff?
Yeah, I didn't say it was universal, Mark. I think there's a insecurity element coming from the Florida State fan base when they're crying about missing the playoffs at 13-0. Because I think this is probably their best chance of making the playoffs in a pretty long time. And I think the odds of them making the playoffs in the future is drastically less than it was this year. I don't see them making the playoffs next year or the year after that.
Well,
yeah,
more slots.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see them making the Final Four this year or next year. I mean, I don't care. I mean, Liberty was going to be in the playoffs this year, Mark. Who cares about making the playoffs going forward?
Everyone.
Well, okay. Ohio State fans shouldn't care. They should care about making it, but that shouldn't be their goal. When I say they should care, it should be like their goal.
Yeah, they are going to view the playoff almost like a bowl game now. That, yeah, they care about making the playoff, but it's going to be assumed that they make the playoff, and it's going to be a catastrophe when they miss the playoffs. But once they make the playoff, it's going to be, now the season starts.
Right. Well, even I'll take it more extreme than that. For Ohio State and Georgia, their season doesn't start until after the first or second playoff game, depending on their seeding. If Ohio State's the 5 and they play Liberty, Oklahoma State to make it to the Final Four, I'm check marking those as easy wins for them.
I would tend to as well.
Yeah, it must be nice being at the top of the mountain, Mark. As a Kansas City Chiefs fan, it's nice just being able to look down at all the peasants and understand greatness when you see it. But anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you. Can you give us one last reminder of what conference Florida State's in?
Florida State, as of 1992 and currently today, a member of the ACC.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Daryl. All right, we will keep it going. Tim's here. Sorry to cut you off, John. I didn't mean to do that. I was taking Daryl off, and you know what happens when he takes himself off at the same time that I take somebody off. They switch the next person on. So it's Tim. Tim, what's going on tonight?
Oh, no, just sorry about the audio issue. Just getting here, make sure we have a phone line for later on. And I don't know if we're doing phone lines here or not, but
we certainly can anytime you would like, but we're going to talk to John. But besides that, absolutely. If we are,
we should run John in here and then start taking calls with me, you, and John.
Let's bring John in. John, what's going on tonight?
Hey, everybody.
What's up, John?
I'm doing all right. I was hoping to talk to Daryl for a second because I kind of wanted to ask him that if the SEC had been in the same exact position with the same exact school, would that school have gotten into the playoff? And my contention is yes, they would have. And
it just means more, John.
If that's the case, then I think that Florida State has a legitimate case that the ACC failed to maintain a competitive conference by not lobbying hard enough to get their undefeated program in to the college football playoff. I think they have a case for that. And was Florida State supposed to know that the former commissioner did a sweetheart deal with his son, who's an executive at Raycom, and cost schools $82 million a year? This is from literally a local Tallahassee article that I'm reading here from their newspaper. So I'm just saying there's more to it than just, hey, sour grapes.
Well, I completely agree with your latter point and all the points related to that. We hit that on the Florida State show every week. We've dived into that in a number of ways. I completely agree with that side of it. And from what I know, what Florida State is working through in discovery. But the point that the ACC should be more effective in arguing for its team to make the playoff, that I can't agree with that. I just don't know what their place is, and they can't control the room and the vote. So
Yeah.
any team, Ohio State in 2018 had the same record and a better strength of schedule, better wins, all of that than Oklahoma, and got left out of the playoff as the Big Ten champion. But they should just say, Big Ten, you didn't argue for us well enough. We're leaving the conference. Bye.
Well, we definitely leave the world of journalism and get into the world of speculation. But Mark, and I know this is speculation, but Mark, if Florida State were an SEC program, do you still think they would have been left out?
No.
Okay. That's all I'm saying. Now,
No, but that is the committee's right, and that is their role to evaluate these teams. And even though I believe that Florida State got screwed, I believe that the committee was they were illogical in their deduction of leading up to where they had Florida State ranked. And I'm not going to go through it right now. I have a number of times in these final 2 weeks of the season versus their opponents. If you go through the logic of the plummet in rankings and the elevation of Texas and Alabama, it doesn't make sense. So that doesn't make sense. But the committee does have the right to select whatever playoff teams that they want.
Sure. I get that. I get that. I just think the FSU has, I think they have a case. Now, whether they're when
I
you
agree
look
with
at
you, but
not
I just don't think that the case has anything to do with the playoff selection.
Yeah. Of course, they're not going to argue in court, hey, should have fought harder to get us into the playoff. But I think there's an undercurrent of that in the lawsuit and the timing of it. But I think that you can't put that in so there's got to be a factual, okay, this contract that we're all bound under till 2036. Okay, what's it all about? How did they lose money and all? That's the kind of thing that you can literally pinpoint the facts on from start to finish. So I get that, but I do think there's at least an undercurrent based on the timing, because the timing was a couple weeks after they got left out that the lawsuit was announced. So maybe a month. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The timing. Anyway, that's actually not why I called in, but I just thought that was interesting. So did you catch today on Wolverine's Wire / The Athletic originally? There was actually a report that one Michigan player was offered approximately $1.75 million to transfer to their school. And this Isaiah Hole wrote the article that I was able to read. Looks like The Athletic was the origin of it, but I don't understand how that's permissible, especially because it was during the looks like during the transfer window, but okay, $1.75 million. And then on the other hand, Ohio State, and I'm not the biggest fan of Ohio State, but I think that what they reported for violations were basically nothing at all. I mean, I don't okay, a photo edit to a recruit, booster contact with a recruit before a football game. Okay. That doesn't happen all the time at programs. So social media violation. A staff member wrote great news about a verbal commit. Imagine that you're the commissioner, Mark, of college football. And on the one hand, schools are being students are being paid offered $1.75 million to transfer. And on the other hand, you have the burger situation. What would you prioritize in terms of accountability in those types of situations?
At some point during the last few seconds, it reminded me of writing procedure manuals at ESPN, because you got to go back. You got to go back to the procedures. What are the rules? So I don't agree with. Yes, I think it's pretty obvious to any reasonable person that what is egregious versus what is ticky tack, and we want to focus on what's important to the sport, what's best for the student athletes, what's structurally sound, what's ethical, all those things. But if those are violations, all those things cited, then Ohio State reported them for a reason.
Sure.
And the rules need to be changed. If they're ticky-tack and they're worthless and they mean nothing, then we need to go back, change the rules, still enforce the rules. So the enforcement of the rules were obviously, well, they self-enforced in that setting. So if you follow me, if the speed limit should be 65 and it's 40 and it's ridiculous that people have to drive 40 miles an hour, but if they're driving 55, well, you pick them up and you got to change the speed limit.
Yeah, change the rules.
So that's my first thought when it comes to that in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, there's also the fact that the NCAA, I mean, we talked about this a lot last Friday, that the NCAA really doesn't even have the power now to enforce the NIL stuff anyway. So like, that's why I think we need a commissioner of college football. We need some type of governing body to institute something that will be permissible by law. Like, I don't know, maybe salary caps like the NFL has, maybe, something that will fly in courts that could be enforced instead of, hey, something that's going to violate antitrust laws, right? So now Tennessee, they announced today they're pausing the process there because they literally can't move forward at all with that punishment. So I don't know.
Salary caps. As soon as you mention salary caps, before we get to salary caps, it has to be determined, are we paying these players for being football players? Is that what these collectives are for? Or are we paying them for name, image, and likeness? Which to me, Mark, there would be no cap on that.
The NIL you can't cap. But with collective bargaining like you have in the NFL, if you make them the employees, like they're gonna start splitting, just like the NFL, they're gonna start splitting TV revenue and all that, and the players are gonna get a big chunk of it. And these coaches won't be making. The coaches are crying about how much, it's so hard to work now, and we got all these signing days, whatever. Look, we can go back to you can pay you what, if you want it like it used to be, why don't we pay you $2 million? These head coaches, why don't we pay you back? We used to pay you when it was so easy back in the old days. They're all making $10 million, $8 million, $7 million. If you're worried about working too hard for your $10 million you're getting that year, do you know what I mean? I'm not going to cry you a river. Those guys back in the day you're talking about were making $3 million a year. So go back to three. By the way, they are going to be going back because most of these schools aren't going to be able to pay their employees, which would be their players now. And the players are going to demand more money because they're the real stars of the game. And so as they start paying, they start paying these
collectively, they are. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. And there will be collective bargaining. They will have enough. They're going to have unions. It's going to be whatever we used to know what college football was. We can thank Fox. We can thank ESPN. We can thank the Big Ten and the SEC because now we're going to get NFL juniors. Did you hear what they said now? They want to put in 2-minute warnings so we get more commercials for TV time. I mean, the 2-minute warning now, you're going to have 2 more commercials for them every single game.
Hey, you got to squeeze in the revenue. But I do want to address, Mark, you said something, and then a few people in the chat said the same thing, that NIL, you can't cap NIL.
Nope.
I completely 100% agree you can't cap NIL. However, NIL is currently being used as a workaround for paying players. That's really what it's being used for.
Sure.
So let's address the heart of the matter, which is paying players for their contributions. And look, at this point, we either need to formalize something. I don't think there's any going back to. Nobody's getting, it's amateur and it's scholarships. There's no going back to that at this point, I don't think. So it's either you continue with the wild, wild west, or you make it fair, transparent, public, so that people can see what these players are being offered. And then you have a cap for it as well. That's all I'm saying. Just addressing the heart of the fact that NIL is really just being used as a workaround.
And I have to think this is one of the main reasons why the SEC and the Big Ten want to break away, because if there's going to be a salary cap, does Ohio State want to operate under the same salary cap as Iowa State or Baylor? No, they want to say we bring in, now they'll still have much more value to the Big Ten and to college football than Indiana and Rutgers will, and Bama will, than Vandy or Missouri, but at least it'll be self-contained within those conferences. Wow. The salary cap, boy, I think that is going to be so incredibly messy.
Oh, yeah.
Do you pay everyone the same amount of money? How do you tier it?
Well, Mark, they don't. You get in the NFL, there's different salaries. It's just each school has X amount of dollars to use in order to get that. But see, that's the problem, though. The problem is why are you going to limit schools to how much money they can spend? That's where the real battle is going to be. Because there's going to be some schools with a lot more money saying, "Hey, this is what the cap should be," and then you have, like you said, you're going to have your Iowa State say, "Well, we don't have that kind of money.
Right.
How are we going to do that? What's going to be fair?" So that's where you're going to see
if they're splitting television revenue, they're going to have close to the same amount of money to spend, even though they're not responsible for the same amount of money. Michigan brings in a whole lot more to the Big Ten football contract in TV than Purdue does.
Right.
Oh, we don't.
Yeah, I'll leave the tier discussion to people smarter than me. But I feel like that all I'm saying is high level. Like I feel like we've got to find a better way, and hopefully we could do that. Anyway, I got to run to another thing, but I did want to just encourage everyone to hit the like button. It only takes a second. Okay, Mark is doing great work here, trying to parse everything that's happening with the Big Ten. It's free to take 2 seconds and hit that like button, guys. It really is. And I'll see y'all on Big Ten Ocho edition Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome, John. Thanks for being here.
Later, everybody.
See you, John.
I will at some point collect all my thoughts when it comes to NIL and salary caps and all of that. We'll take our first call of the night. Certainly. Do we have the number out there? It is.
No, I didn't know if you wanted me to put it up, so I can put it up.
Yeah, at any point, we will take our traditional calls from here on out until Tim needs to leave at whatever point close to the USC call-in show that's coming up at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, everyone. Let me throw this rough math at you, Tim. 85 scholarships on every team. 70, I think the exact number is 69. 70 Power 5 teams, Power 4 teams now. That's about $600 million. That's about 85 scholarships. Let's say every player is capped at $100,000 or the average salaries at $100,000. So each team's going to be spending about $8.5 million on a payroll, and multiply that by 70. You're looking at $600 million. I guess the sport can support that.
What it's going to come down to, what they're paid is what the market, whatever their revenue. Yeah, I think so. The money's, there's lots of money in college football. the TV contracts alone. I don't know how they're going to structure it. I have no absolute clue. I've just heard that they're talking about, the players union, just like the NFL, players unionizing, collective bargaining to see what they're going to be paid, etc. I think we said this a year ago. They're going to ruin college football. I mean, it was inevitable. I guess, too bad. Future generations, we had our Camelot. I can't see how it sustains it. The more and more, literally, I was laughing. I was this morning. I was laughing when I saw the 2-minute. They're going to do 2-minute warnings. They're changing the clock rules as far as going out of bounds. Just there, first down. Stopping the clock for first down. So for the last 2 minutes, they're turning it into the NFL.
They want to generate more money.
Now, here's a question. Want to get really tinfoil hat? If you're the NFL, would you cry if the college football just went to shit?
I don't think the NFL. Oh, sure, the NFL benefits.
Absolutely.
Of course, the NFL benefits, but the NFL rules the world anyway. It doesn't.
Well, rich people, Mark, right? Corporations, right? Do they get when they have their billions? They go, oh, cool. We can chill out. We got more money than God. We can relax now. We don't have to squeeze people anymore. No, they're like, how much more can we get?
But if you notice, the NFL makes no decisions that are based on being influenced by any other sport. The other sports make their decisions and schedules based on the NFL. The NFL could care less what anybody else is doing.
If you're the NFL and you're just the king of the castle, right? What's the only other way you can start making more money? Breaking into new markets, right? There's a lot of ripe football fans out there, but their allegiances are to, my dad, his dad followed this program for the past 70 years of blah, blah, blah. If you could somehow just devalue what they loved, they're going to turn somewhere, just like in any kind of economy, they're going to turn to a like substitute, right? Well, that's what I've been saying for about a year on your channel. If you turn us into NFL light, why wouldn't I just watch the NFL? When you take away the regionality, when you take away the amateurism, when you take away the clock rules, when you take away everything else, why am I hanging around for cornerbacks that can't cover, right? Safeties that can't tackle. I'm going to go, oh my God, that linebacker can't run with that tight end. Why am I watching this? I'll watch the NFL where the defensive end can run with the running back. Where the corners, can actually cover people in space. Yeah. Why am I going to watch an inferior product? Everything that made it special and different is slowly being ripped away. And I've been saying it. I'm going to say, like, literally, I almost spat my coffee out when I saw, oh, hey, let's do some the 2-minute warning on the halves. I started going, when are they going to stop? They keep screwing with the clock rules, which was one of the big things in college football. Next thing you know, watch the hash marks move, right? Goalposts. The goalposts are the same, but the hash marks. They move the hash marks are next. It's just slowly becoming NFL junior. And when it becomes that, for instance, I'm a USC alum. Am I going to care as much about USC? Yeah, I probably will, but I'm a freak. But a lot of people they're going to be a situation where they're not college athletes anymore. Really. They're not. When do they stop going to school, Mark? Is that the next thing? When they don't have to go to school anymore? Because that's coming. Yeah. That's coming really soon. And then
who's going to be the victim in this? I'm going to take a guess. Is the non-NFL college football player.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to be duped into thinking, wow, this 80 grand that I made, I'm living. I got it made. And they'll collect $80,000 for 3 or 4 years. And then I didn't learn anything. I didn't go to class. I didn't do anything. Didn't learn a skill. Didn't learn anything. Didn't make connections, whatever. And wasted my money. And now I've got nothing.
And that's what it's going to be. All those. That's why I argued about when they cut those 30 scholarships from USC early, during their sanctions. That was 30 kids that will never have a USC degree. Some of them will go to the NFL, but not many. Let's say like 7 of them go, or 6 of them go to the NFL. That there's 24 other kids that could have got a USC degree. And so now you're going to have across the country all these guys that are not going to make it to the NFL, because what percentage of these guys actually make to the NFL? Not a very high percentage. So then all those guys are not going to have college degrees that they were graduating with. That's where you I hope that actually the lawmakers in our country actually do something for once. They step in and go, you know what? We can't let this happen because of collegiate athletics. Like, sure, we have these rules about antitrust and blah, blah, but the greater good, there's always the greater good. And that could be the greater good argument. You basically say all of these thousands of people are not going to get college educations now because this pipe dream, the NFL, and if they don't make the NFL, then, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to bust up knees. They won't have healthcare they won't have any healthcare to fall on probably after their bodies are destroyed in college football. It's going to be a horrible mess.
Maybe, I'm not a lawyer, maybe there is a shred of something to stand on to say that these are universities and they were established for high school graduates to then have an opportunity to get a education at a university while also showing a talent in a sport, football in this case. But the deal has always been, because you are representing the school, you are actually a student at the school, that will need to continue for college football to continue, for these athletes to go to school, attend class, pass classes, pass tests, and that will continue to be part of the deal. I would hope so.
Somebody's asleep at the wheel, though. I mean, if I'm here, Joe Schmo Tim is here realizing there's every little bit. I mean, all this, everybody here on, you know, on March 1st is seeing what's happening to college football. You'd have to be early on, there's some little changes here and there, but really, if you start looking at it now, you're really peeling it back. It is literally becoming the NFL. I mean, what will be the difference soon?
It's even worse in this way than the NFL, that the NFL, and maybe this will change when they become employees, that the NFL, at least these teams can keep the bulk of their teams together because there are free agency rules. There are trade rules. So most of the roster is maintained. And if you're an NFL fan of a particular team, you can at least know that most of that team is going to show up the next year. It's not free agency for everyone. It's a very limited number of players. Well, college football is free agency for anyone at any time or during the transfer portal windows, which is good enough to be any time.
No.
So at least there's structure in the NFL to maintain what is one of the most important tenets to any sport, and that's the attachment of the fan base to the teams, because they get attached to the players. They want the familiarity of knowing that player is going to be playing for their team.
We don't watch college football for the quality of the college football. We don't. I don't go to Friday night games for high school ball for the quality of football. I go there because I love high school football because these kids are trying to get to college. I love college football because these guys are trying, you know, to get to the league, but also they're getting an education. You know what I mean? It's different. These guys are not professional athletes. And now, yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I'm just restating the same point. I don't want to be redundant. It's not going to be watched by people. It's going to be unwatchable if what we remember from. Because why would you watch something that's nothing like? I mean, I remember if you go back to the Dodgers when I was a kid, we had the same infield my whole childhood. Literally the same infield. Even Dusty Baker out in the outfield. So we had, you know,
Garvey,
then free agent
Lopes, Russell, Say. Yep.
You know, and then you have free agency come along, you know, and just ripped it apart. And it changes there, but you know, I bet you a lot of people left baseball during that era.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
So you're going to see it. Tony Altimore said it last year. If you lose these markets, so let's say eventually they go, oh shit, we screwed up. Let's go back to the regionalities. Go ball. They're going to people that are going to leave the sport forever, and they're going to watch. You know, maybe they go back to baseball. They're definitely a lot of them are going to go to the NFL, and that's why I'm saying, I don't want to hatch conspiracy theories, but the NFL would not shed one tear if college football went to crap. Why? Because they're worried about their franchises. They've saturated the market. I mean, football's football. You can only put so many people in the stadium. There's only so many eyes for TV, right? How do you fix that? More markets. And for a long time, they were talking about, hey, let's go to Europe. Remember NFL Europe? Hey, let's go into Asia. How about this? Why don't we just why don't we just get rid of all those teams in the South and the, and some of these smaller states and cities? And hey, let's start putting more franchise there, because if they're not going to Alabama games, if they're not going to, LSU games, or they're not going to, I mean, sorry, this is a bad example because there are pro teams there, but I mean, Alabama, right? They could put a franchise somewhere in Alabama and just support it by the people there. I mean, right now it's not feasible because they're college football fans. But if you degrade college football to the point where it's just an inferior NFL, why wouldn't you be an NFL team? And that's the nature of people. They'll want to go to winners, and I just see that's what's going to eventually happen. Now it's just shaping up more and more. I mean, I started feeling this as soon as I started getting originality out the window. So
the point that I was going to make, that's probably out of order now, but in terms of what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, I bet if we asked me, certainly I know my answer. If we asked everyone in the chat, who are your favorite college football players, whether that be now, all time, just your all-time favorite college football players, almost all of them played for one school. And that is something we can always hold on to. Matt Leinart always played for USC, will never play for another college football team, and there will never be that allegiance divided. Reggie Bush, Archie Griffin, whoever you want to name, almost everyone. Well, that's obviously going away. And you tend to, it's just human nature, and it makes total sense that you're going to be less attached to a player who, oh, yeah, he won a national championship in my school, but he played at 2 other schools before that. Yeah, it was great that we had him for a year and we won a national championship. That was awesome, but it's not anywhere close to the same attachment as you would not be campaigning for Reggie Bush to get his Heisman back if he was at Notre Dame as a freshman, spent 2 years at LSU, then he came to USC as a senior, won the Heisman, and there you go.
And there is something to the transfer idea. Yeah, I you're just talking about one more thing that's made things differently recently. Yeah.
And I don't know how to correct that or mitigate that, because they have freedom of choice, freedom of movement, and they should have it. I don't like it. It's not good for the sport, but it's good for the individual as long as they're making wise decisions. And it's a option and a right that they should have.
I think everyone, just like in politics, and I'm not going to get political. I'll stop just short of that. People should have a freedom to do whatever they want, vote the way they want, vote with their pocketbook, do what they want to do on that level. I'm there, right? But the problem is you need to get money out of politics, just like you need to get the media out of college football. College football is being run by the NFL networks now. You have the college presidents who want their money, and then you have the Fox, CBS, ESPN, right? All of their money. These decisions are not being really made anymore by college football people. They're being made by academics for money, and they're being made by the major networks, and that's the problem. And they don't care, because why? Their pockets are all getting lined. They're all making their money, and I think they're willing to kill the golden goose, and that's what's going to happen in the end. In the end, they're going to squeeze as much out of this thing as they possibly can, and it's just no one's going to want to watch college football anymore. I mean, I won't. If it keeps going the way it is, it's just not going to be fun to watch with salary caps and when they changed. Look at a little thing they changed. It really kind of upset the entire calendar when they moved to February signing day and then moved up and then changed. Look at how that changed the sport. I mean, maybe not for the casual fan, but all you like diehard fans out there, anyone's watching a college show on March 1st, we're all diehard fans. It changed the whole calendar of the game. And now you have guys that they go to a school and they commit to the school, and then their coach goes off to the NFL, or their coach gets fired, and now they've committed because they want to commit in December, but their coaches leave in January and February, get fired in late December. It's kind of just going in a circle. So, and drain. I mean, sort of go down the drain, circling.
Yeah, well, there was certainly enough going on in December without moving signing day up into December. We've been, for most of our college football lives, been focused on bowl games during December. That's been the excitement of December, has been bowl games, but that's the last thought of anyone. And it's more about transfer portal, national signing days, mid-December, the playoffs coming up. It's all that.
Here's one more thing. They keep saying it's for the players, for the players, for the player. Why don't they have dead periods, where you can't oh, well, these kids they have to work on their studies and they want to concentrate on this and that, blah, blah. Fine. Make a rule. You can't contact them till February. I don't know why they're trying to rush these kids into decisions before they even know who their coaches are going to be for the next year. That's what I'm saying as well. And I what's moving it forward towards what? During the conference championship game? Well, we'll just get rid of the conference. Watch that. That's next when they get rid of the conference championship games. So now you get conference titles, Mark, won't mean anything anymore. Why? Because if you have 18 teams in a league, clearly nobody's going to play. Everyone's not going to play everybody. When you had 10 teams, it worked. And 9 conference games. But when you have 18 teams, how are you going to decide who's, oh, well, we don't need conference champions anymore. We have a playoff now. What does that sound like? I mean,
yeah, nobody remembers who wins the NFC East,
right?
Or
yeah,
the AFC North. No,
right.
It gives you this much of an advantage in the playoffs. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So it's clear. What I don't understand is how come there's not a louder voice for college football out there to saying, hey, Fox, ESPN, school presidents, enough. We want to keep the integrity of our sport, but clearly nobody's hitting the brakes on any of this. We are going headfirst into an NFL model. And I don't know at this point if you can be stopped.
Well, some of these things are inevitable. Other things can be, let's say we reversed and we went back 10 or 15 years and we could start over and we could kind of correct the errors of our way. The old structure of conferences could stay the same with the regionality, and we could tie the hands of ESPN and Fox and say, you've got no say over this. The Pac-12 is going to stay the Pac-12, and all these conferences are going to stay the same, and we're going to keep these rivalries and these regional this regional fabric of the sport. However, the NIL and the transfer portal, now it can be structured better. We can feel better about there being rules that are adhered to, but those are just flying in the face of federal law. That can't be, we can't go back to yesteryear. The players are going to get paid and they're going to have freedom of movement.
The idea, though, was NIL. And because we didn't have a real enforcement for NIL and like legitimate NIL. I mean, I don't know what the court cases are saying now. Are basically, no, NIL could be anything. I mean, it could be, hey, you want $100, kid, here's $100. I don't really understand that part of it yet. But I do know this: when they become employees, you don't have guaranteed 4-year employee. Well, I guess you have contracts, and I take that back. But they can't be fired now, and you can be traded, right? I mean, in the NFL, they trade people, so you don't have a choice. Let's say you love being the running back. Let's say you dreamed your whole life of being, the running back at Nebraska. Your grandfather, you've always wanted to be the running back, and you get your scholarship to Nebraska, and then they say, oh, well, by the way, listen, hate to tell you, but we've traded you to Purdue, and we need 2 linemen, and we're gonna get 2 linemen for you, and so that's gonna happen too.
Well, I don't know that it's going to happen. You might be right. I can't foresee that, but there's a lot of things I couldn't foresee. But if we want to take it to the degree that you're taking it, and it does truly become an NFL model, then if it all becomes incorporated because these players are paid, then just like the NFL, what happens with the NFL draft? The players don't get to decide, I want to play for the Dallas Cowboys. That's my team. I get to, no.
Is there going to be a draft?
They get drafted. Is there going to be a draft out of high school?
Right.
If the players truly want this to be treated like a profession, then it's just like any corporation. You know,
you can get cut too.
We're sending you to the corporate office in Buffalo. That's where your office is. And your corporate office is in Indianapolis and yours is in LA. And that's the way it works in the real world.
Yeah. And another point is, and we're talking about it, you could also get cut. They worked really hard to get to where you get a 4-year college education, right? Like in the Pac-12 was the first one to do it. The Pac-12, you're guaranteed 4-year education. You know, now they can kick you from the team, but they have to honor your scholarship for 4 years. Once you become an employee, they want to cut you, they can cut you. We got a caller, Mark, if you want to grab it right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining the Voice of College Football. It's Tim, it's Mark. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Mark? Once before, second caller. I've been talking about this with people around me for a long time. You guys have been talking about, and what I see happen in college football, and do money, of course, is we all pull out conference time, and that really what's happening is consolidation. And I think consolidation is happening. You're going to have Big Ten and the SEC is probably going to put off at some point. So about 20 seats and break up and share them between themselves, because when it all happened, the courts are all saying, the National Labor Relations is saying that these college players are now employees. Once they become employees, that changes everything.
Caller?
You can't restrict movement.
Caller, I'm sorry. Hey, listen, this sounds like a great call.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think your audio is cutting out. Could you do me a favor? Could you hang up and call right back?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure. I'll work that.
I mean, that sounds like a great call. I'm just not like every 5 or 6 words getting cut out. I forgot where we're at, but
I don't want to see that, but you got to take the good with the bad. If you truly want to go in that direction, and if you're the players, I get it. You want to get paid, but to your point, now that's not going to affect the impact players that we're all tuning in to watch, but that's going to impact the program player that, yeah, he's playing on special teams or whatever. You're not playing that well. We've got other options. You're gone. Bye. And with it's the scholarship and everything else. And also, again, if we want to take this, if this is truly going to be run like a business and a corporation, then the players should not have the option to go sign with whatever school they want to.
Yeah, agreed. Sorry, caller, about that. Let's hope your audio is fixed. Are you there?
Yeah. You guys hear me good?
I think it's still cutting. Yeah, go for it.
Cutting out, so.
Give it a shot.
Cutting out? Okay. Well, I'll give it out. Well, I said, I don't know what but the court decided that the players now considered as employees. So that changed all the rules. That's why the NIL won't stick. You can't have any rules with it because you can't limit their movement. Am I still cutting out, or?
Yeah, you're still cutting out. We're trying to hang with you.
All right. I'll try back another time to talk about it. I don't want to make. I don't like listening to people talk to. So I'll try back. Is there a way to get on through on?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop the StreamYard. Is that okay, Mark? Because I get it. Sounds like a great call, and I don't want him to miss out on it. Maybe caller, I'm gonna drop the. You have ability to get on StreamYard and click the link in chat.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna drop that for you right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the link in chat. All right.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there with the audio. I double checked it twice. I don't think it's on our end. So, but hopefully that will fix. I'm gonna have to get out of here pretty quick for USC. Get ready for the USC show. But I mean, this gentleman sounds like he's filling in some gaps for me that I get. I don't know all the mechanizations, but I will say this. I will say that regardless of the money, regardless of the salary conversation we're having, Mark, the game, they can. I'm more concerned with them with the clock rules, messing with which truly makes the game different than the NFL game. That's the part that's really bothering me, and it's clearly designed around maximizing revenue for TV. It just is. And if they mess with it and tinker with it too much, well, I mean, we want more football, not less football, right? They're shortening the games. because of the running clock, right, on first down, etc. I mean, they said only would take a couple minutes off, but you think about it, there's a lot of time that runs off a clock in between plays. And if you get 3-4 first downs on a drive, you're talking about a good, at least what, minute and a half that's going to come off that clock. So,
well, the NFL
that's just on one drive.
The NFL games are pretty tight in terms of timing. I know from doing what I did for a long time, because I was at work on Saturdays for a long portion of the time that I was at ESPN. And one of our biggest headaches in the world was college football games going over the time window into the next college football game and trying to accommodate for all that advertising inventory and trying to fit it into the next game and moving games to other networks to get that game on. It was just every week, just headaches all over the place. Well, they have shortened the game to try to get it within that window, because these college football games, I remember 15 years ago, they used to average like 335, 340. It's pretty rough.
I'm going to do an article. It's great. It'll be fun. Must be happy. I'll do a listicle on it, and where it's just basically, here are the rules that have changed in the past 5 years, because we can list them, and everything from, the transfer. Now what? Now you can transfer as many times as you want. It seems like it's not even the one transfer time rule only. Now you can just, whenever you like, you can free agency, and doesn't matter the month, doesn't matter the day. You're transferring all throughout the year. So I think we have that caller here.
Yes, we do. Welcome in, sir. Thanks for calling.
Hey, can you hear me good now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hate listening to callers when I cut out, so I didn't want to do that to you guys. Yeah, I've been talking about this for a long time, and I've been saying what really is happening is consolidation. When we talk about conference realignment, what's happening is consolidation, in my opinion, and that the Big Ten and the SEC are realizing, I think they're going to expand to each 20 teams each, at least, and break off eventually. Because what's happened with NIL, the courts keep on ruling, and the National Labor Relations Board has a case in front of it, too, that these players are employees. And once you call them employees, that changes everything legally. And that's why all the NIL restrictions keep on getting knocked down in the courts by judges, because you can't just come up with arbitrary ways to restrict it. So there's only one way once you have employees to restrict it. And you guys know what that is, right?
Well,
it's a CBA. You have to have a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement. That's why there's consolidation going down. So the SEC's going to snap up at least 20 teams. The Big Ten's going to snap up 20 teams. And they're going to have to break off from a lot of the other college football teams. And maybe just them two on their own, like NFC, AFC, in order to institute a CBA. Because without that, you don't have control. If I'm Michigan's president, and I'm a Michigan grad, by the way, and Mark's the Ohio State president, and you're USC's president, you want control above all else. And the only way to get control is to get the CBA in. I know it stinks because I was born in 75. I love the old days. I love the bowl games. I love all that. I wish we could go back to it. But unfortunately, I think we're on a march to minor league football, really. It's going to be a minor league feeder system to the NFL. And it's primarily going to be the Big Ten and the SEC, in my opinion. Because you have to consolidate. Because the NFL has how many teams?
32.
Right. If you go to 20 and 20, Big Ten SEC, that's 40 teams.
Yeah.
And you have a smaller pool still of money than the NFL.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
It's smaller. So you're going to have to consolidate, get a CBA, and get control. And then once you have a CBA, you can control everything through your CBA. You can control movement between teams. You can control they could even control access to the universities and who goes where if they wanted to. I don't know how tight they'll make it, but because it's like firemen. You can't just graduate high school and go be a fireman because they have a CBA that says you have to be 21 or whatever before you do this, and that. The NFL says you have to be 3 years out of high school. It's all because of their CBA that's legal. If they didn't have a CBA, that wouldn't be legal.
And just to explain the CBA and the reason why the conferences have to be at a certain number and no more to anybody who may be wondering out there, it's because of the value of each individual football program is only so much. So the larger you make it, the more you water it down, and the more money has to be distributed between more individual programs, and the less you can pay the players. And so you have to have a certain threshold to say the value has to be for each. They're a TV commodity, each football team, each football program, so you can pay the players at a certain level.
This is a great call. But what is your name, sir?
Well, my nickname's that's my childhood nickname, Bimbo, but my name's Tim.
Oh, Bimbo. Another Tim. Good job.
But you can call me Tim.
Okay, so Tim, nice to meet you, Tim. So here's what I want to know, because it appears that in the NFL and in the NBA, it's swinging towards the powers going from the owners to players.
Mm-hmm.
Players getting more and more power, whereas in the old days in the NFL and the old collective bargaining agreements, right, they were a lot more lopsided. And this is more swinging towards the players. Here's the difference between the NFL and college football. There are thousands and thousands of college football players, and if they got together, so here's what I'm trying to hold out some hope here, because if you're talking about going down to 32 teams, right, that's cutting out a lot of kids in this model that we would be making thousands and getting scholarships all the way across the board. There's a lot of money for everybody, but now you're talking about turning into a little small thing. But let's face it, is college football going to be worth as much as it was if it's only 32 teams, you guys? Because huge parts of this country aren't going to give crap about football anymore. Like the entire, I hate to say it, the entire West Coast and Big 12, except for maybe, a handful of schools, the entire Western United States isn't going to give a crap about college football whatsoever. So you just lost a lot of market. Am I wrong on that thought?
I don't think you're 100% wrong. I think the TV networks are running those numbers and have been running those numbers as well. I don't think it's going to be 32, by the way. I think it's going to be at least 40, probably 20 and 20 in each league. But yeah, you're cutting it down. But I think the Big Ten will be national. Like I think Florida State and Miami will come into the Big Ten. So there'll be a true national league. I think the SEC will be a little more regional down in there. But I think they're running the numbers, and I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference. Like Mark runs the numbers, and when a Michigan plays even a small team, they still draw a few million people, or Ohio State plays a small team. But I know what you're saying is that now, like the Big 12 fans, like an Iowa State fan might not care what's happening with, when Ohio State and Michigan play now because they have absolutely no part in it.
They're not even a college football fan. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
They're disenfranchised. They're not even a college football fan anymore. They're now a baseball fan. They're now a basketball fan. Maybe they turn to college basketball.
When you run the numbers, I think mathematically, and you go down to 40 teams, even if you do get a little smaller in the audience, you can't do it with 130 teams with the way it's going. You can't have them be considered employees. There's not enough money to split between 130 teams. There's no way. You won't be able to.
How about
even the
70?
big schools would struggle.
How about the Power Four, though? 70.
Yeah. 70 teams, I think, is too large, too. There's just not. I think when you cut down from 70 to 40, and I'm sure they're running these numbers as we speak, in the SEC Big Ten meetings, I guarantee they're talking about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're running the numbers.
Making some assumptions. I'm sure their numbers are more accurate than if I took on the challenge. They know what they're doing. But still, to Tim's point, and I know it's anecdotal, if you're a Kansas State football fan and you think your team's pretty damn good and has a shot to make a playoff, go to a Big 12 championship game, have a really nice season, and you're locked in to watching your team and watching connected teams, but you may drift off to a Clemson Florida State game or drift off to Ohio State and what will be USC, Penn State, whomever they play, those other games that are big in the sport, because I feel involved nationally that my team's good. And yes, I hear crap about the Big 12 all the time that we're no good, but we're in the playoff. We got at least 2 schools that are going to make the playoff. And so I am connected. I'm part of the in crowd and I'm connected to all these other conferences, but suddenly, no, they have their exclusive club of 40. We basically play group of 5 football now. And, even if we win the group of 5 championship, I don't feel good about that. That's not the real national championship. So you know what? I'm going to start doing other things on Saturdays and watch the NFL.
Right. The thing is, you have that one guy, I forgot his name, that cleans all the charts up, and he works with some of the universities and that.
Tony Altimore.
Tony, yeah. And what Tony makes a point of, though, is a ton of TV ratings, guys. We're like crazy people. I'll watch San Diego State play Fresno State, late at night. Big college football fan. But most of the ratings, or a lot of it, is it's on NBC, and the old people sitting in the chair just keep it on NBC. So, like, to the point of cutting it from 70 to 40, I don't think it's going to cut the numbers enough I think you're going to make more money with just the 40 than splitting it between 70, even though you might have a few more diehards. Because a lot of the numbers are just people sitting there watching TV, and stuff like that.
I agree, but I think that will, maybe not in 1 year, maybe not in 5 years, but that's going to wane. Do you know what I mean? Those people are sitting there watching it probably because they've watched football their whole lives, or they have some attachment somewhere to it. I'm saying that, 5-10 years down the road, this thing called college football, if it looks a hell of a lot like, well, I tell you what, how many of you guys watched a minor league baseball game this year?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I've gone to a couple, but it's
gonna be like that.
Even Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball makes a ton of money, more money than it's ever made. But if you ask the average person, how many Major League, for anybody that's roughly 50 years old, or has been around the block a few times, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, how many baseball players did you know 20 years ago versus how many do you know now? Baseball players were national celebrities in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Now, nobody is a national celebrity. There might be 2 or 3, maybe. But they're making
more
within their local markets. They're making tons of money. The Indians, the Guardians are still huge in Cleveland. The Pirates are still, each individual in their market, they're still big in that market. But nationally, the sport is eroded to nothing. Nobody watches the World Series. Nobody watches the playoffs, except in those local markets.
I cannot call them the Guardians, by the way. They're still the Indians.
Yeah, that was tough for me to do as well.
All right. Yeah, but that was my point on that. I think we're experiencing consolidation. I mean, not to get too political. I mean, the whole economy's consolidating, in my opinion, and it's going to go across sports too, anyways, in that way. Not to get too political on that, but so what about this 12-team or 14-team field real quick, just shifting gears real quick? I think what the Big Ten and SEC are going for is the 14-team field. And what I've heard is they want with the 14-team field, you have 2 buys, and they want it guaranteed with them 2 to have the 2 buys.
Yep.
And then I've heard, I know they're shooting 3 out there, but I've heard some people reporting that they want actually 4 locked-in spots into the 14 field. And then Notre Dame, I think if they're in the top 12, they get in 2, by the way, because someone was questioning Notre Dame earlier. And I heard if they are rated in the top 12, they get in on some of the models. So they won't lose out if they're in the top 12. But I wish we could force Notre Dame to join the conference, really, to tell you the truth. But I think that's why the Big Ten SC don't want to go to 16, because at 14, they get special privileges. They can be the only 2 if they can get it negotiated. And they have all the cards. They can play hardball. They can say, fine, we're going to take our ball and go and form our own. What's everyone else going to do? Talk about losing money. Everyone else is going to lose the money, not them. At least they're going to have the money follow them for now, And especially once they raid the ACC's time is super limited. Because once Florida State gets out, and they're going to be out in the next couple of years, it's just how much are they going to have to pay. And once they come out, Miami, North Carolina, and probably Clemson have spots too somewhere. So what happens when that happens? I mean, the other leagues become totally irrelevant in a lot of ways, as far as the big time football.
Tim, you're supposed to come on and tell me I was crazy, to pull my tinfoil off my head, because this is the most depressing conversation we've been having for the past 15 minutes. But I mean, I just don't, baseball ruined. And I agreed. You know, like I said earlier, it was all the collective bargaining was always geared towards the owners. The owners making all this cash. The Donald Sterlings of the world just like collecting money and putting a crap product out there, right, every year after year out. And now it's going towards the player. And I've always thought that the players should get money, but the problem is the players and the schools and it's not about that. It's true. I really do believe this is all being driven by the TV and the TV contracts. They're saying, look, we got an unlimited amount of money to give you guys, but you're going to have to sacrifice your sport in order to do it. And a lot of the people that, again, the presidents, because that's who it is, the presidents' universities are going, all right, we'll do it. We'll go ahead and ruin the Golden Goose, which is strange for me because they're not all academics. You know, I'm not going to name names, but there's schools out there that spent at Tony Altimore has shown time and time again that they make more money off of college football revenue and they spend more money on college football than they do, you know, in other facets of their university, you know? So what I'm trying to figure out is why is this happening and why is it happening so fast? I thought that college football would put up some kind of fight. You know, money runs and ruins everything, but it just seems like college football is rolling over and letting these TV, these corporations that run these TV networks.
Here's the problem,
There's no commissioner for college football.
Exactly. I mean, who's college football? When you say college football is allowing it, who's college football? Who is college? Nobody's college football. That's the problem.
Right. There's a vacuum. There's no leadership. There's a vacuum for leadership. There's absolutely no leadership. I think you talked about it, Mark, where you have, you know, Petiti and Sankey and these guys are just they're just looking out for because they're employed by their schools in order to make their conference make more money and crush everybody else. I get that, but these are not dumb people. They're not short-sighted. They have to see that where this thing is going. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. But, you know, who knows? This is all on the assumption that it becomes a minor league and that no one watches minor league baseball, so no one's going to watch minor league football. Maybe that's not the case, but I just have to tell you, my buddy a long time ago, and I stuck in my head all the way back to the 90s. He said, I don't watch college football. I'm like, why? He said, cornerbacks can't cover. You know, everyone's slow. The game just sucks. Why wouldn't I watch the greatest players in the world? Why don't I watch NFL? He's like, do you watch minor league baseball? And I'm kind of lame. I love baseball. I would watch minor league baseball, but I don't go and seek it out. And so I'm wondering, I'm just wondering how much can a sport take before there is some kind of lash and fallback on it? And then at that point, will it be salvageable? That's to be the big question as well.
Yeah. Well, guys, I've called in one time a year ago, but I'll probably start calling a little more often. Love college football. Listen to you guys.
Great call.
I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you being here. Awesome. And you've got a place to be, right, Tim?
Yeah, got to go. I'm leaving right now. So thank you so much, Mark.
USC Call-In Show with Tim and with Matt. It's the best you will find anywhere. So get there as soon as we're done here, the USC Call-In Show, and we will leave the link. Jackson, if you can do us a big favor, and you already do way too much for us, put the link to either the channel, because they can find it right on the front page of the channel, but to USC, so everyone can follow us over to the USC Call-In Show. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. And go Hawks. Thanks, Erica. See you guys later.
Erica, thank you so much for being here. Erica with the 5 spot. Bama fans would not cry about not making the playoff as an undefeated team. Yet, Saban crashed the Big Ten championship in 22 to cry about it. Just saying. Okay. Erica, hate to argue with you a little bit here, Erica. I get it. Okay, here's the deal. If Nick Saban wants to be on a television network, any of them will take him at any time. And so what Erica's alluding to is that in 2022, Alabama, Nick Saban, they don't win the SEC. They don't win their division. They are a 10-2 team. They have an argument that they should be in the playoff based on their schedule, based on how good they are, but their record said no. The night of the conference championship games, Nick Saban, for example, was on the Fox broadcast of the Big Ten championship game and lobbying for his team. Well, let's understand, Fox has captivated the Big Ten audience with its Michigan-Purdue game, the Big Ten championship game. But if they can bring on Nick Saban, I can almost guarantee, I certainly wouldn't put my mortgage on it, but I would put a pretty healthy bet on it. The network called Nick Saban in Alabama. Nick Saban in Alabama did not call the network. So they wanted him. If you can steal eyeballs away and you're the Big Ten championship and you've got a lousy matchup between Michigan and Purdue and you're going up against an ACC championship game. So I get it, but thank you for the 5 spot. And yes, all sorts of different coaches through the years have cried about their team being left out. And that was Nick Saban in 2022. That was, I remember Urban Meyer lobbying for his team after the SEC championship game in 2006. Different model, of course. That was in the BCS era. And he got his way as well, which Nick did not. But that's the way that played out. But thank you so much for the contribution, Erica. So to me, the writing on the wall for the college football playoff and this thrust toward a 14-team playoff was, in the words of Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner, when he was interviewed by ESPN. And some of you have heard me say this, but for many of you who are joining us for a first time or don't get to see everything, Tony Petitti told ESPN last week, he said, number one, we've got 2 big goals for the Big Ten. One is that we get as many teams into the playoff as possible. Now, that's every commissioner's goal. They want as many teams in the playoff as possible. But when Tony Petitti framed it that way, what he is telling everyone is we are going to make moves. We're not just saying, hey, we hope we have a great year and all these teams make the playoffs out of the Big Ten. No, by making that statement, what he's saying is we are going to maneuver to put our conference in the best position to get as many teams as possible. So that was the first clue. The second clue was we want to play the most meaningful games we possibly can, especially in November. Okay, well, that sounds great. That means Big Ten fans and college football fans are going to get the best teams playing each other. We're going to get a lot of Ohio State, USC, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. We're going to get a lot of those kind of games that drive up the ratings, and that's what the Big Ten wants. They want the best brands playing the most games against each other so that they can get the best TV ratings and make the most money. Yes, and it gives us the best games to watch. Gives the Big Ten the most exposure so that they're not showing Maryland and Indiana on NBC at 7:30 at night. Okay, but those 2 objectives, those 2 goals are contradictory to one another. Because if you have the best teams playing each other more often, you're suppressing your record. The records of those teams are going to go down. You're going to create more 9-3 teams. And those teams won't make the playoffs the way it's currently constituted, because the College Football Playoff Committee, for as much as we think that there is conspiracy involved, that Florida State example in 2023 is the only one of its kind. During the playoff era, never at any point, never, 0 times, you cannot find one time in which the playoff committee said, you know what? This Big Ten team's 10-2. We're going to jump them over this 11-1 Big 12 team. Or this SEC team is 10-2. We're going to jump them over this 11-1 team from another conference. They always went in order. The records always went in order. They always took from the top. Undefeated, 1 loss. Okay. Now, certain years, 2014, 2015, 2018, 2023, No, not even 2023. If you get past the Florida State thing, for the other teams, there was no tiebreaker that needed to be made there. So anyway, my point is they always took the teams right in order of record every year without fail until the Florida State situation. Now, again, they had to break ties. Oklahoma, Ohio State in 2018 both went 12-1. So they had to break ties. Of course, they had to fit the 4 spots. So they couldn't create new spots. So that second comment by Petiti in getting most teams in the playoffs, but also playing the best brands in the best games, those contradict one another, because if you're playing better games with better brands, you're going to knock down your records and you're going to get less teams in the playoffs. So I saw that and I thought, what's the next shoe that's going to fall? What is the next move that's going to be made to clarify what he means? Because these two things are contradictory right now. Oh, got it. The next day, 14-team playoffs being talked about. That's in the mix. Okay. Well, that not only affords 2 other teams spots, the focus goes on, well, not just 12 teams, now 14. But no, the focus of that, the impetus for that 14-team proposal is not about numbers 13 and 14, which is great. That's going to be great for 2 other teams, Penn State, Tennessee, whomever that gets into the playoff that would not have otherwise made its way into the playoff. That's good for them. They're most likely going to lose a first-round game or a second-round game. They are most likely not going to factor into the national championship race down to the wire. What that is more about are the 2 teams that get the buys, because instead of 4 buys in the 12-team playoff, there are going to be 2 buys in the 14-team playoff. And that is simply the SEC and the Big Ten saying, no. We could not have our second and third place teams that are 11-1 and 10-2 with ridiculous wins and really strong schedules being 6 and 7 seeds to number 3 and number 4 seeds coming out of the Big 12 in particular, and also the ACC that have lesser teams. We can't put up with that. No. We go to 14 teams and we'll probably get those bottom spots. But the real push, the real emphasis, the real reason we're pushing for 14 is to get those 2 buys and level out the Arizonas and Utahs of the world getting buys. Don't want that. So thank you, everyone, for being here at the Voice of College Football. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. There is no reason why you shouldn't just use that link. It's the same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. We got a Big 12 channel. We got an SEC channel. Please check those out. Those links are in the description section of all the videos as well. The USC call-in show is starting in mere minutes. It's actually on right now, the USC channel with the USC call-in show. Appreciate you being here. I was going to go through the Big Ten odds. The championship odds were released by Vegas this week. We'll get to that. I'm going to be posting videos. They're coming out tomorrow as well. We've got all sorts of stuff coming your way right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you next time.